Hi, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life on Dr.T TV. I'm Dr. T, and this is the place where emotionally sensitive people get to have a voice and also get to learn the emotional tools that they need to succeed. With me today is Helaine Sheias. She's a certified international group facilitator and Kripalu inspired Hatha yoga teacher, registered with the Yoga Alliance. As a certified therapist with the International Association of Yoga Therapy, she's developed an earth based spiritual approach to health and well being by creating YinspirationYoga, which is a tapestry of somatic release, intuitive awakening, and the cultivation of radical presence. She holds a doctoral degree in human sciences and a master's in child development with a focus on special education. She's a graduate of the Socially Engaged Spirituality program at Saybrook Graduate School. A pious believer in the yogic "my body is my temple" philosophy, Helaine's life's passion is to introduce yoga as an instrument for transformation and self empowerment, thus bringing about a greater sense of spiritual consciousness and bodily awareness to individuals. Her vision for YinspirationYoga is to teach people how to maintain sacredness in their lives by consistently embodying a sense of wholeness, exploring their relationship with their mind, body, and spirit from a place of equanimity and self-acceptance. Helaine offers a variation of yin-infused yoga classes that are both multi-level friendly and invigorating. Welcome, Helaine. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
So I'm really excited to have you on the show, Helaine, because we've been on a parallel journey together, and that where I years ago have taken some of your really powerful yin yoga classes, and I've been really able to receive that gift from you. And so this is a really great day where we get to connect on some of these topics that really serve emotionally sensitive people and really help people gain more perspective and more understanding about tools that are available to them to really, up level their life and the quality of it. So I want to have us start by just having you talk about your journey, that brought you to really create all of this and really prioritize the things that you are up to in the way that you serve people, and we'll get into it from there.
Thank you. And once again, I'm really honored to be here and just having that yogic connection with you, knowing where we both practice and where I taught, and
Yeah.
sort of having that yogic community that feels really
So
good. So there's so many places to start from. I can start from, the yoga perspective, but I'm really tuning into the emotionality, what I call that sort of emotional IQ, if we go back to seeing it sort of as an intelligence. So as a kid, I was like emotionally off the charts. Nobody knew what to do with me. Like I would get triggered by anything. Going to a birthday party for someone in the class was like an anxiety attack. And my mom, bless her heart, as much as she tried, had no idea what to do with me. So it was sort of like the first day of school, Helaine's going to go into her emotional meltdown. And I never really got it. I got better with it, but I never really got what was going on because nobody really understood what was going on until I discovered yoga. And then it was like, oh, really now? How come nobody told me this before? And this is many, many, many years later. But I remember one of the first things we learned in my teacher training, and I'm talking like many years. I came into yoga relatively late in life. I was doing my teacher training, I think, in my mid-40s. Huh. And so I remember sitting there in one of our first classes, and thank heavens it was a Kripalu base, which is very gentle. It was a small class, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to be able to do this. But I could feel that same stuff that I was having as a kid again. I was like, oh boy, here we go again. Back on the roller coaster. And so one of the first things I remember learning about is the different aspects of ourself from a yogic perspective. And I'm paraphrasing everything here because this is what I've done with it. And it's like different dimensions of ourself. So there's a physical dimension, there's a cognitive dimension, but then there's an emotional dimension. And then there's an energetic dimension. And if you want to go deeper, there's a spiritual dimension. And I felt that I was finally being validated for this dimension that I had that nobody really ever talked about. And so, without going into all the details about it, what my work has been in and where I'm sort of moving towards with this YinspirationYoga and the way that I teach and the way that I work one-on-one with people is, how do you find that balance? How do you do the juggling act between these different dimensions of who we are? Because you can't solely live in the physical as much as sometimes we want to. You can't solely live in the emotional or the cognitive as we've been sort of adapted to or maybe trained in. Yeah. And when one is off balance and the other's not getting enough of what it needs, you're going to feel it. Okay. Whether you feel it physically, emotionally, energetically, mentally, etc. And so my work has been, and this is sort of, I'm backtracking for a second, what really gave me like the listen to the call, Helaine, you got to do something with this, was my work with special ed kids, especially younger kids, that they were being, they had to be categorized as special ed to get what they needed. Yeah. But what we were talking about was like this emotional sensitivity, a kinesthetic sensitivity that just didn't fit into the world of school. Yep. And it wasn't really about the learning disabilities. It was about, who am I in this universe? And then fast forward into the yoga, I met these same kids when they were adults. And yoga was the only thing that sort of brought them back into balance. Yeah. So there is a huge physical concept to yoga. I'm not taking that away. There's the asanas, the poses, there's the breathing, there's the movement. But then in addition to that, there's this sense of awakening and awareness and mindfulness that you need that in order to start to explore the emotions. And before we started, you and I were talking about the studio, and one of the things, when I'm working one-on-one with people, I'm like, what's the pose you really can't stand?
Exactly.
What's the pose that, you know what, the minute the teacher says,
yep.
And so for me, Pam would say, let's do crow pose. And I would just like,
me too.
We're not doing crow. Because I couldn't,
I'm in my limitations. Yeah, I'm in my limit. Yeah,
but everybody else is doing crow, so why can't you do crow? And so in trying to discover what we're holding there in the physical body around the pose, then I can open up the doors to other aspects of what is this creating in you, and how do you find that integration between what your physical body's telling you, your emotional, your kinesthetic body, and why. And I think for some people it was really the hammer hitting the nail on the head, because nobody really talked about it.
Well, Helaine, this is so powerful because, for those of us that felt like you felt, that there was this emotionality, right, as a young being, and there was so much, right? There was so much to feeling, right? There was so much awareness, and how that, feels like it manifests in anxiety, and it manifests in fear and resistance and overwhelm and overstimulation, and the way in which, as you said, your mom did her best with that. And that's the thing that I just, knew within my own self. I knew something. I figured it out along the way, but so many emotionally sensitive people that I talk to, week in and week out, it's like, how far back does this go? And they're like, this was always the case. And they felt like that their parents were not equipped for them in particular, which builds a lot of shame and fear. And like, if there's not a way that I fit into this, right, it starts to build it creates a whole lot of maladaptive processes and things like that go on. And so it's really powerful because, this to me is just this tremendous gift of awareness that is there to understand what it's all about and what you're able to do with it. And like you said, I feel like it's so fascinating that there all of these years of our human evolution, and there's not necessarily a path through our development as people, which is like really emotionally educating people about the self and all aspects of it in every way, shape, or form. And it's only later when the pathology is formed and it's all the pain and everything is about like, let's fix this pain, which is developing because we have not necessarily as a society yet learned to completely, guide people through an emotional self-development that is actually some sort of a curriculum, that is intentional. So it makes sense. And I'll finish this part by saying all of the conscious awareness that I ever experienced on my journey, which was profound, it took it to a whole nother level when I started to go to yoga, especially because, like, for so many people, it's really uncomfortable to go to yoga when you've been used to going to aerobics classes and all of that. So, with that said, what do you have to say about how a lot of people can feel that, like, the resistance of actually doing the thing of getting in their body and discovering themselves?
I think you bring up two wonderful, and they're so powerful and strong here. You talked about curriculum and you talked about awareness. And to translate that into yoga is a practice. I'm never going to do crow like I'm supposed to do crow. I've given up on that. But as a practice, what it helps me work with, I might be paraphrasing you a little bit, I hope that's okay, it's part of my emotional curriculum. I have to continue to work on that curriculum, which is why yoga is a practice and why you come back to the mat, even though it might be uncomfortable. But if I'm practicing like it's an aerobic class, and I have nothing against aerobic classes, they're great. If my practice doesn't come with that intentionality for awareness, then I'm not going to touch upon my curriculum.
That's right.
And I'm going to give you two really brief examples, because this is what really got me more involved in looking at this and me being more conscientious of it. And this is a while back, before I was as deep in yoga as I am now. I was working at an institute that was teaching young adults how to work with kids with learning disabilities, but through their body.
Yep.
And I was bringing in a yogic perspective to it. And one of my colleagues sent me one of the students there, and she says, look, I don't know what to do with him anymore. He's a wonderful guy. We've hit a wall. I'm come on, Helaine, you got to help me out.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, send him in. Wonderful, nice young guy, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. And I can see that he is so struggling in his body. And, I'm trying to do like these little check-ins, like, what about this? What about that? How is this feeling? Any pain, any injuries? I go through my little list of things. And then I finally get this hit, and I look at him and I'm like, you lefty? Are you left-handed? And he's a guy. You can see he's a guy. And the tears start coming. And he's trying to wipe them away. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I've never told anyone this story. He says, I was born, I wasn't in the States at the time. I was working in Israel. He's like, I was born in Turkey. They figured out that I was going to be left-handed. You were not supposed to be left-handed in Turkey at the time. They tied his arm behind him, his left arm around him, for something close to a year and a half. Okay, I'm talking about like a 5 4.5, 5, 6-year-old.
Oh, traumatic.
Never talked about it, ever. It was buried. He became right-handed, supposedly. But his body was left-handed. Wow. And so when he started the training and we came back into doing physical work, your body knows if you're left-handed or right-handed. Yeah. You know that when you teach, you know that when you practice. And emotional-wise, it just triggered everything for him. Wow. Absolutely everything.
This is amazing. So
and so I'm standing there going, okay, look what, and it's bodily awareness, it's consciousness.
Yeah.
But this was from, and we were doing different poses. But when you practice a pose, when you get into that asana, and you've done this, when you get into Warrior One, and you know who you are, a part of you has to resonate with the fact that you're right-handed or left-handed.
Sure.
And that there's a dominance on one side, unless you're lucky enough to be ampy and whatever. But, but this poor guy was like, oh, it's been affecting me on different levels.
Oh, yeah.
And I won't go into the whole story,
so
but it was so powerful to really see him for who he was and the struggles that he was having, not only physically or mentally, but the emotionality of it. Like, who am I?
Wow.
And so that's one aspect. The other aspect, and I think it ties in together, when I was doing my early childhood and special ed work, I did this great training with the Tavistock Institute in England. And it was, we did infant observations, like getting kids as young as you can, and just literally for an hour a week, just watching them.
So cool.
And it was amazing. one of the teachers that they brought in was an Italian, I think she was a psychiatrist named Piontelli. And Piontelli went even deeper. She'd watch the ultrasounds from when the kids were in utero, and then she'd follow them for 3 years after they were born.
Wow.
And she'd keep in with these observations to see what did she see in the womb that is now happening with the kid as the children as they grow. And she brought in a case study of a 18-month-old young little boy who came into her room, who they could not contain his anger and his frustration. I mean, the kid was like all over the place, totally all over the place. He would destroy his house, his room, anger, outbursts, temper tantrums, was barely talking. I'll fast forward and not go into all the details that she had. What she discovered was, and nobody talked about it, is that he was a twin in utero, and the twin died. Wow. But it was too far along, and so they couldn't take the twin out before he was born. And the parents were so-called grieving, but nobody told the kid.
Yeah.
And so from an emotional, kinesthetic level, he didn't know where his brother was.
Yeah. Wow.
And so she spent months with him, working through the body again, through the emotions
the
again,
grief, all of that. Yeah.
Of how to cope with this. Now, can you imagine him not getting that?
Or just the sort of the classic, cognitive therapeutic techniques and things like that, which, all of these important modalities, and yet it's such a unique and personal thing that each human needs to access what they need and to move through whatever the traumas are, so that they can really be like fully online as a person and not be in these traumatic reactive states to things that that's amazing. Even if you don't know about it, like there's a knowing.
No, it's that sense of awareness that we have, that I think this is, why your work is so powerful and sacred, because we have that emotional awareness.
Well, and Helaine, I was literally just going to say, that this conscious work that we do, right? Being in the arena here and following our path, what we're navigated to do and where it takes us, it really is, to say it's a gift is such an understatement, but when you were speaking, especially about the first part of what you just shared, I was taken back to a moment where I really knew it was time for me to do yoga, which is really kind of fascinating. And here I was, from the earliest ages, feeling like I was this emotional scientist, like objectively observing my family members like in their natural habitat, right? Like I'm affected by it, but I'm also aware these people are not, all of these reactive emotions are not who these people are, but it's something that they're captive in, right? And so in my journey to keep like just figuring this stuff out, because my family was not only not equipped for it, they didn't want to look at it at all, right? I tried to go into therapy at a certain point for an eating disorder when I was 16, and my dad was just too afraid of what the doctor was saying. She's afraid of you and wants to be closer to you. And that just sent my dad, that just said that was too much for my dad. So I had been on this path of growth, and there was so much consciousness, and I felt very empowered, but I also was just continually open to what my navigation system was telling me. And here I was every day, most days, 5 days a week at least, going to the gym, right? Like people do, like my family did, all of the athletics. And way back, our mutual, friend, colleague, mentor, sister, Pam Maldonado, who is just a blessing. She had been a part of my journey because she had been a trainer for my dad and his brother, and her and her husband had really been a part of my family's sort of workout life, and I had followed in that suit, and I was aware that Pam had gone from being the super queen of exercise and aerobics into having this yoga studio. But I was still in this zone where I didn't realize at until this moment, but where all of this working out and going to the gym and doing this job, I realized was just based in my conditioning, and it was based in fear, and it was based in the fact of like, if I don't do this, I'll get fat, and I'll fall apart and the world will be over. And I must be in this prison of working out, which is what I was noticing it was more and more. And I was just being honest about it with myself finally. Like, this is not my yes. And I just had this, I remember sitting in the chair in my living room, and I just had this moment where I was just weeping, and in this beautiful way. And I thought, my body wants to stretch, it wants to walk, and it wants to dance. And that's what it wants to do. And it does not want, and again, there is no, as you said, there's no judgment of the gym or aerobics. I see it all, as an exploration of the self and a development of the self. But it was clear to me. I was like, there's no way I didn't want to ignore it. And I just was able to start already before I got into the yoga studio. I was already releasing, so much pain and so much struggle. And it was something like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm going to be living in this truth, and I'm going to be living more in my body and everything that I'm going to grow, all that's going to grow from that. And it's fascinating to me to this day that it was like, it might as well have been like jumping off a cliff. Mm-hmm. And not everybody, not everybody, of course, that nobody needs to think that they need to like stop all their workouts or anything. But this was what was true for me. And I remember thinking like, I don't know what's going to happen, because I thought I had to work out my whole life, and getting on the mat and being in a container, the way that being with a yoga teacher who is really holding a sacred space, for human experience, it was profound. I just really, again, I thought I was a pretty conscious person, but this was an awakening beyond anything that I'd ever known.
I love how you put in that holding sacred space for the human experience, because that for me, you want to define yoga, you brought in the best definition. because there is, and I believe this is in the emotional work, we find the sacred within that. We're searching for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can talk about why I think somebody's getting on the mat. Like they'll come in and say, you know, my balance is off. I don't feel right. I want to strengthen here. I want to stretch. I want to do this. I want to do that. But when you come into that place, like Pam does so amazingly, wonderful, that place of holding sacred space for whatever that human experience is, then you're creating a whole nother dimension and level of the practice. And I believe that over time, you got it really fast. You were there. Yeah. You jumped off the cliff already. You took the leap.
That's how I roll.
I think people get it as they continue to practice, and that's what brings them back. And I remember this woman coming up to me after class once at Pam's, and she's like, I cried in Shavasana, the resting pose.
Yeah.
And I said, that's wonderful. This is pre-COVID. And I gave her a big hug. Yeah. And she's like, are we allowed? Am I supposed to? And she was serious.
Yes, I know.
And I knew she was. And she's like, you know, nobody told me this was going to be like this.
You think it's a workout.
There's also something so unique about it is that you can have 20 people in the room. They're all doing the same sequence. You're going to have 20 different experiences.
So amazing. It's so amazing. And when I think about it, I mean, I can remember, and I hear this too still from people, but and I know you do. I can remember all of these thoughts, and I knew they were conditioned thoughts, like something has to be super cardio, and if I don't get my cardio, and like as if the only way that the body could be in balance and in harmony was that there was this prescriptive thing that you were supposed to follow, this amount of weight training and this amount of cardio, and you know, that was the prescription. And maybe I could mix in a little fun hip hop dancing here and there, but still had to do this certain amount of stuff. And you know, to not realize how much that was limiting, because it wasn't over through my life before that, it wasn't allowing me to do something, quite honestly, which is when I started to pay attention, Helaine, I realized that part of why I had actually at a certain point moved to Manhattan for 7 years and then been out in the scene, if you will, in Manhattan, is because I wanted to dance. And it looked like I was going out, and what I was doing was just being in a society where you could go and, you know, in Manhattan, you can go out any night and go dancing and just be celebrating and being in your body and moving. And I thought, oh my gosh, this whole time, this whole journey, this is what my body has wanted to do. It has wanted to move in whatever way that it wanted to. And thinking of that, that young man you were describing, you know, as somebody who, and I know so many people experience this, growing up, and my father was expressing himself through excellence in athletics, and he brought me down that path, which was very beneficial. There was a point way early on where I wanted to be a dancer, but that didn't fit what he was comfortable with and what he needed and wanted. And so this whole journey was like, I always wanted to dance and entertain and express and just be this self. So this going onto the mat, I mean, I recognize how many people resist it and feel like they need to do so many things. And this was so powerful for me. I want to say to everyone that this journey with yoga, through yoga, it allowed me to be the most integrated person I'd ever been. My body ceased to need all of this cardio and all of this stuff. It was getting what it was really wanting and needing at that moment. And it allowed me to go into this whole area of ballroom dancing and this combination of things and walking and knowing, I didn't even really know I was not walking in an aligned way until all of this. And so who knows where my body would have gone to if I didn't become one with it and really be that self that is the constant exploration for me.
Well, I love how you bring up the concept of celebration, what you were doing in
Yeah.
Manhattan when you discovered all of this, because I think part of what happens on the mat, and for some people it takes a little bit longer, is that you're allowing yourself, you're inviting yourself to really celebrate your body. And as I have, evolved in my practice and in my teaching, and also in the fact that we're aging,
Yeah.
is that celebration is shifting all the time, and part of that celebration is really figuring out and honing in, and okay, where's your body now, and what are we focusing on?
Yeah.
And so maybe in my in the first couple of years, not that I wasn't paying attention to alignment and posture and balance and how do you hold
How do you
yourself in
hold
the
yourself?
world,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, it's so focused on it now. Like if I'm doing tree pose, okay, and you're standing on your right leg and your left knee is out to the side, what are you really pressing into on that right foot?
Right.
And how are you feeling your posture, and where are you looking? Because when people get into that alignment, then they can celebrate.
And it's
Because
this
not
home.
only the
It's home.
alignment, you
Yeah.
can't celebrate. And I think, we don't know that, but then people begin to take it off the mat, which is why
No.
this
So good.
COVID time, I mean, I don't know what the slang is where you're working with, but I get people who are like on Zoom overdrive
They
and
are.
overdrive.
Yes.
And they're like, I'm not taking a Zoom class because I just spent 8 hours on the screen. And I'm like, I don't want you taking a Zoom class.
Yeah.
Go out and take a walk.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
out and do something, because our bodies are so not, they don't know how to adapt to this.
This is
I'm not
big.
saying do your Zoom yoga, because for some of us, that's the only thing that they can
Yeah.
do right now. But it's finding that place of where can you celebrate what your body is offering you, and to see the practice as a celebration as you bring it into that sense of alignment, of balance, of breath, of really finding who you are and where you are. And I've had people
Absolutely.
come in, whether it's in class or doing one-on-ones, and she's like, one of the women I worked with, and she's like, I'm not a yogi. I don't know why I'm here. Somebody told me that I have to.
Yeah.
And then having this revelation of, wow, I couldn't believe that I could do this. I couldn't believe that this feels so good. And then on the other hand, there are sometimes, those classes where you just come in off center. It's not a good day.
You show up.
And at the end of the practice, you knew you showed up for yourself, and something shifted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's this whole sense of transformation, which I think is so crucial to the practice. And every single day, it's a different practice.
Well, and I love that so much because, again, I just recognize in your expertise in child development and, this beautiful set of, like we were talking earlier about this, there's the physical and the emotional and the spiritual and the scientific, and to be able to study it all, to be able to study the self and know the self from all of these perspectives is so important. And it's really profoundly kind of preposterous to me that we're going along in society still, but I get that we're at a certain stage of human evolution where from the beginning and when we're in school and all of this stuff, that we're not necessarily learning about the self and the body, what it is to be a self and to be in the body. And there's all these great things going on for kids and all, and there's all these wonderful sports, and yet there's only certain things that are really saying, this is really a practice of being in your body. Maybe the martial arts area, and we know yoga and all of that. But I remember recognizing at a certain point that I had gone through my life doing like high level athletics, playing basketball all the way through college, being a star in that area. And I thought to myself, I have never fully been in this body. I have never fully been paying attention. And so whatever it is that I've been able to do, it was some small percentage of my capacity because I just wasn't even aware of all of what was there. and all the interconnectivity to it and all of that. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so blessed that I actually am on this path to live inside my body, to know it deeply, to discover all the meaning of everything. And when you combine, the emotional awareness that we really teach here and the techniques, I just don't see a way where any of it it's not meant to be separate from each other. It's meant to be
No.
like an entry point so that you can just, wherever it's the mat or whatever, so that you can really dig into what it is to be a person, to be an evolving person.
And I think we all have a different entry point, whether it's your physical body, whether it's your more emotionality that's bringing it forward. It's what's your first step.
Yeah.
And for some people, especially from what I'm seeing, people who get onto the mat, sometimes it's just that energetic dimension. Something's off energetically. I can't put my finger on it. When I was working with more of my special ed kids, I would teach them, I would talk to them about the fact that your filter system is not working like everybody else's.
Right.
And we have to fine tune it. And I think many yogis get on the mat knowing that there's something out there, whether it's the external energy or the internal energy, whether it's the turbulence or the turmoil,
the stimulus.
They can't put their fingers on it. But once we get an awareness of that, a consciousness of that, then we can start to talk to the other parts of us that are really needing the attention right now. It's sort of like, when I talk to my yogis, I'm like, I want you to listen from your heart. Don't listen from your head right now. Listen from your heart, listen from your soul, because the insides, our internal landscapes, that inner world is talking to us. And so and once again, I'm not knocking the aerobics, but when I'm in my aerobic class, I'm not listening.
I know, me neither.
When I get on the mat, I can't shut that voice down because it's there. It's there in every pose, especially in crow.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I love dancer's pose. And so we're talking about celebrating.
I know, it's so good.
That's my celebration pose.
Yeah.
And so what I encourage people to do is I want you to find your celebration pose. Embrace it, embody it, celebrate with it, make it yours.
Well, and what I find so amazing, Helaine, and this was, again, I thought, I'm like in on some big secret here, because, again, it's not that, again, well, let me say this. What I notice is that there is something guiding me to know what my body needs in any given moment. And so I remember saying to myself, align with this, because also, Tracy, you don't need to decide the rest of your life if you're never going to play basketball again or lift weight. This is what is up right now. And that whole same, parallel of like always being worried about the future, and if I do this, and then how many days and it's like, like you're not needing to decide every single second. There's something about, as you said, there's the attention, and you're being called to that, to pay attention. And it's also, so fascinating. And I really invite everybody to know that what is calling your attention, no matter how scary it feels, because this is what I notice so much of how, as a society, there's still such a fear of going deep with your own self, right? And we call it looking at emotions or not, or wanting to face stuff. And it's fascinating, the resistance to that, but everything's available there. Everything that, as you said, it's the parallel to crow pose, the things that feel like you want to be able to do it, but it's hard to do, right? Just feel like these things calling your attention, and what is available. It just astounds me what's available there. And I also just really deeply invite everybody to explore and discover more. Because there's such rigidity around so many things that people feel like they're supposed to do.
And I think in that discovery, once we can let go of the rigidity and the constrictedness, in that discovery, when I get people into the relaxation pose, into Shavasana, one of the first things I say is like, I want you to surrender, but don't collapse. And part of my personal journey was, before I got as deep into the yoga that I wanted to, you know, I wasn't a professional athlete, but I was working out, doing my thing, da-da-da-da-da-da. I didn't know surrender. I knew collapse. Like the body was just like, we're done. That's it. No more. And in that place of surrender, as opposed to collapsing, we're still engaged. But you're engaged on such a deeper level of consciousness and awareness that, and it's scary for some people. It's really scary. But if you come back to it and you stick with it, there's so much more that you learn about yourself and who you are and what's your direction.
Your truth, right? That truth is available. Right. And again, what you do, Helaine, and, you know, with Inspiration Yoga and with bringing yoga, you know, as a practice of self-awareness to people's attention and to serve them that way, you know, just to give everybody an idea, one of the most, well, so many powerful moments of my life and self-awareness and consciousness have come on the mat. And one of them, I can remember being in class and Pam, this beautiful goddess, you know, who just knows that she's intuitively guided at each to know who to put her hands on in the class and who to connect with. And, you know, just something as simple as going into you know, in between, is vinyasa and going into child's pose, and moments where I wanted to stay in child's pose, but the other part of me that's like, you should keep up with this and you should do all this. And really, how many times had she said, as yoga teachers do, feel free to stay there, right? Because it's its own world right there. And just staying there for many more moments of the class and having this massive release and discovery that I had been I had absorbed my family's grief over these 3 tragic deaths that had happened in my father's childhood that were never talked about, that were, you know, don't get near it, trauma on every level. And I was like crying out the grief that I had absorbed, that I hadn't even been there when these things happened, right? My life in and of itself, I felt had been pretty good, but there was all of that there. And if I had not, I couldn't have done that in aerobics class or lifting weights or whatever. It just wasn't coming to me.
Right.
And here it was. And it was like, just even the recognition that there could be more there, you know, like that I had not realized before, it brought me to another level to want to go back to just keep exploring and discovering through these poses in my body and whatever beautiful moment that Pam was cueing, because that's all part of the process as well. This collaboration, right, that goes on.
And part of that cueing and the collaboration, and that you allowed yourself to release, is that you went deeper into beyond the physical aspect of the asana. I mean, child's pose is it's a healing pose. It allows us to go to those places, whether we're talking about which chakras or energy centers or meridians that we're talking about, which is why I love the yin so much, because it focuses on the chakras and the meridians and those places where the body knows automatically, intuitively, it knows how to release. And that's what your body needed. And just to add a little bit about awareness, I think part of this whole thing about the energetic dimension is that we carry, you know, I'm not talking about the physical DNA. We carry the ancestral DNA.
Oh yeah.
Because and it needs to be addressed. And you on the mat, thank heavens, you addressed what your family was not allowing you.
Yeah.
And as Pam has told us so many times, when you're doing that healing work, it's not just impacting you.
It's
it's impacting everybody.
Yeah.
So people talk about my relationship with myself changed, but my relationship with my family changed. And things start coming into, in a different sense of alignment.
Well, and
That's such a
Helaine,
touching story.
this is why it's so powerful, and again, just to keep really inviting everyone to keep discovering this relationship with yourself and grow it and receive all of it, because and what I found, the combination of the looking at all of the emotions and looking at the emotional patterns that go on in human beings, and where all these areas of sensitivity combined with none of it would be what I'm able to do for people if I did not have the practice of yoga and being in my body as the greatest form of self-discovery, right? That is just, it's so powerful, and all the way to the point that this has been a part of, for me, healing a whole lineage of like eating disorders, right? Which, try as I might in all of these different ways, because what's the thing? Go do all the exercise, and here it was, like, being able to, all the women in my life who had restricted and dieted and all of that stuff, and I remember thinking, is this my life sentence, that I will be counting calories and doing all this stuff? And that ability to trust my body, that in myself, that was saying, it's time for yoga, dance, and walking, to trust myself on such a level that all of the like all the different types of weight that I was carrying and all the programming around food and all of that, to now, it's been years, but to get to live a life free from that tyranny, and to be able to be, not just to be able to be free from all of that. I feel like sometimes, and I do this, Helaine, I look in the mirror and I'll say to like my ancestors, we did it. Like, we did it. We're on a new trajectory here. Thanks for bringing it all the way this way, and I'm bringing it this far. Right.
I think that aspect of the new trajectory, I love that. And you brought up trust. I mean, people ask you, why do you get on the mat? And I wouldn't jump, my first choice would not be trust, but thanks to you, it is a building trust with ourselves, our deeper selves, and all the dimensions of ourselves. And I think, especially with everything that we're going through now, people are really exploring what this whole sense of trusting me. Yeah. Am I going to put a mask on? Am I not going to put a mask on? Am I going to do this? Am I going to, and I heard our lovely governor yesterday talking about, we're doing all this work, but you as individuals have to make the best choices for yourselves. And that's also bringing in this element of trust.
It's huge.
Am I, is the choice that I'm making coming from a place of trust and authenticity and realness and truth? And if it is, then I can trust what I'm doing. And I strongly believe yoga builds that.
Well, and I love this too, Helaine, because what you're speaking about, this is something that is a real big part of the focus that we do with clients who are emotionally sensitive and highly driven, and just, they really want to self-actualize and make their contribution, but they're in that overload, they're overstimulated, overloaded, and don't know what to do with all of this awareness that is there, right? Which they may not call it that, it just feels like overwhelm and pain and all of that. And the reality is that creating a relationship with yourself, that discovering and being in it, and having that ability to not be reactive to everything and be in the reactive conditioning, right? Which we know also in yoga, what I discovered in any level of intentional self-awareness and inquiry is just how life can be when you're just not caught up in all the patterns and the conditioning, and you can actually be in, as we know, the present, and really be choosing, and all the the intelligence that's available there, that it feels like people are operating without a lot of that in in with without a lot of it available to them, and then struggling in life. And there's just so much there that people are incredibly powerful, and it takes something like yoga to really discover the truth of that, you know, and carry that forward and expand that in whatever way that people want to.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
So
I think it's a journey, and we have to know that there's a journey, and it's not that there's a special destination we're getting to,
yeah.
but it's that continuous journey of exploration, of self-inquiry, and being, and like I said, like you said before, celebrating, even though it sometimes might be painful and aggravating, and you know, I call, you know, I'm a big Sesame Street person.
Yeah.
So, am I in the Oscar the Grouch mode today? But sometimes you have to be.
Yeah.
But allowing that to, you know, I say to my yogis, let it untangle, let it unravel, let it unfold, because if we stay in the knots, we're not going to get anywhere.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've known for a very long time, every session I have ever facilitated since I was an intern, there was just an organic way that I knew that it was important, that the beginning of a session was all about what there was to celebrate, what was working to whatever degree, because you don't build something off of what isn't, right? You grow off of what is. You acknowledge its presence, that it is there, it is at this level, it is that level, however you want to conceptualize it. And that would be really fascinating for people, because they want to go into the conditioning, complaining and everything. And it's like, we're going to keep hanging with the celebrating for a bit until that becomes a normative part of your process as a person, so that you can build off of everything. Otherwise, there's this, you're trying to go here and you're way over here when really you're here. But it's just a change of awareness to recognize that. And that I do, by the way, too, tree and dancer are absolutely my two favorite poses as well. And I'm trying to think of the one, half moon is one of those. I just, these are the greatest rewards of life, the nourishment.
Right? Yes.
The nourishment. So Helaine, just, so that people can, you know, understand even further beyond what we've shared so far, what it is that that Yinspiration Yoga and yoga and what it is that you do, how that can serve them, what they can expect from that. What would you say about that?
I think that I'm looking at two different groups of people. The yogis that are there, and I'll get to them in a minute, they have their practice. And I'll bring in a little bit about yin after that. But some of us are petrified of yoga. I was so resistant to it. My mom would schlep me to classes. This is my best yoga teacher. I hated it when I was in my 30s. I was like, why is she doing this? Until it finally sank in one day. Thank heaven. So I think it's, for those of us, you know, for those of us who are like, never done yoga, I have no desire whatsoever. It's that cultish stuff again. What are you guys up to? It's really, yin is an invitation, the way that I present it, in my humble opinion. It's an invitation to be playful. It's an invitation to explore. It's to celebrate, like you said. And it's also, it's an allowance of getting out of our own way. This is what one of my teachers once said to me. It's like, yoga's going to let you get out of your own way, because you're experimenting with things that are not your habitual patterns. Yeah. It's not what you do every day at the gym. You know, I'm a swimmer. I know how to do my swimming. Thank heavens they opened up the pool. But it's not that. It's not that sense of repetition. There's an exploration here. So there's an invitation to try something that your body might be calling you to do, but that up until now you've had that resistance and hesitance. And yoga's not for me. What I love about yin is everybody can do it.
Awesome.
I've got 80-year-olds practicing with me. I've got 19-year-olds practicing with me. I've got people who are not athletes and people who are this. And it's just this wonderful tapestry of people who can come on together on the mat in yin and find what they're looking for. The other group, the avid yogis, they're like, I'm sorry, Helaine, I do vinyasa, I do Bikram, I do heated, I do Iyengar, and I don't mean to just be dropping all the names. Everybody has their little niche, especially in the Bay Area, what they like. And mine is, I'm not any of those. This is my craziness. This is me, the emotional kid who's like, I got to figure something out. The special ed person. My vinyasa comes in and says, I want to complement your practice. I do not want you to let go of your vinyasa. I don't want you to let go of your Iyengar. You do Bikram, keep doing your Bikram. You're doing Hatha, keep doing it. And one of the best examples that I had is a woman, this is right before COVID. She's like, look I've been at Pam's forever. Pam keeps telling me, you got to go to Helaine. You got to go to Helaine. She's like, I don't want to go to Helaine. I don't want to do it. I got my practice. She said, but, my knee started hurting a little bit when I was jogging and that little, anyhow, COVID probably broke the whole thing, but she got hooked. And I said, and I was so glad. I said, do not let go of your vinyasa practice. Keep running. Just bring it in as a complementary addition, another celebration of who you are.
Nice.
And so that's sort of what I'm trying to do with the inspiration now. You're an avid whatever you are, stay with it. This is just something additional that will bring in that sense of balance and awareness and awakening.
Lovely. I'm ready, Helaine.
That sense of radical aliveness. It brings in something that you haven't felt up until now.
Radical aliveness. I am ready, Helaine. I am absolutely ready. So, Helaine, before we wrap, and I have everybody, learn how to get in touch with you, I always ask this question on this show, which is, if this was the last day in this earthly experience for you, and you're here to give a message to people that is this contribution, and I know there's so many of them, but that main message that, for the rest of their lives they'd carry that on, and they'd say, Helaine taught me that, and it really resonated, and it's really powerful in their life, what would that core message be?
I think the core, and I love this question because I think it's so who you are, but it's also what you're empowering us with to really look at the essence of that. I think and I'm going through it, I'm answering you through the yogic perspective, is that it's a sense of believing in myself, and believing in myself through my body, through my awareness, through what we talked about before, through my truth, through trust. And I don't mean to bring this into the sense of religiosity, but I think there's also a sense of faith here.
Oh, yeah.
Having faith in myself, in my journey, in my calling. And everyone has one. Mine just happened to be yoga. Somebody asked me this many years ago. There was no way. I mean, the universe said to me, this is your calling now. You have to listen to this.
I got it. Yeah.
And that's what I want to put out there to people, is that through yoga, you can find what that calling is, and that joy and celebration of being who you are. And I think that's what you've done through all the amazing work that you've been doing. And I want to give people that hope and that faith, and that each of us can discover what that is. It's a process. It takes a while. There's some curves and swerves. But essentially it's there because it's our authenticity. It's who we are.
Helaine, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful. I want to thank you for being with us, and I want to have you share where it is that people can get in touch with you and discover more about you in Yinspiration Yoga, where do you want them to go?
So they can go to YinspirationYoga.com, and there's a contact thing. There's my email there. That more than happy to connect with everybody. When the studios finally open up, do not look at the schedule on the Inspiration Yoga website because it's not there. I haven't updated it yet because we're still waiting to see what's going on, but you can definitely contact me there.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much, Helaine.
Thank you so very much.
You are so welcome. And everyone, please receive these gifts that Helaine and I have collaborated to share with you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.